When the war started in the Ukraine, there was a lot of things that I started thinking about. Of course, people start to freak out. People start to get scared because of the uncertainty of what's going on. But I didn't really realize how it would affect other churches. And I'm gonna get uh, Dave on here. I'm gonna allow Dave to talk. Dave, are you there? You have to unmute yourself, Dave.
How about now?
Okay, yeah, great. I wanted to bring Dave in because this happened at his church. I'm gonna skip through some slides real quick. Before you get started, Dave, I do want to cover some current events that have been going on, and just to bring them up. Jessica sent them over to me. She normally does this. She normally has this spot where she talks about, but she brought up some current events at 3 churches in Riverside vandalized. Now this is in the Jacksonville area. Leaving hundreds in damage. Teen sexually assaulted a girl in the church parking lot. We were down at New Day one time and we had Charlotte County Sheriff come in and talk about all the things that happened on their parking lot. And it was kind of an eye opener. Santa Monica Church targeted in burglary. Suspects steal over $100,000 worth of equipment. A Christian pastor in Australia is sentenced to longer prison time for sexually assaulting his own son. Former coach, church deacon from Claremont County convicted of child sex crimes. Jessica is sending these things out, and vandals are arrested for allegedly smashing windows of Queens Church in New York City. So those will be sending out, and we'll be getting those out to you all so that you'll be up to date on the current events that we see going on. But one of the things that we've been really stressing here lately, and it's just because of the unknown, and that is a lot of mental illness. And that has to do with when we kind of talk about that, we're not just talking about bipolar or different things like that. And I don't know that you would really consider maybe this a part of mental illness, but we have depression, we have trauma, we have all these stress, all these things that happen when we have uncertainties in the country and in the world. When COVID happened, we brought it up that there would probably be 3 types of people that would come into your church. There would be those that would be ranting and raving, that this was nothing more than a government plot. We would have those that would take it very serious and be upset when people did not put their mask on, or upset when people let their mask fall down, or they didn't stay the normal, the social distance that everybody was supposed to. And then we also talked about those that would be upset because they've lost everything. Well, now with the war in Ukraine, and still mental illness is still going on, but New Day Christian Church had something happen this last weekend, and I'm going to let Dave talk about it, that was really kind of a surprise. So if you want to, Dave, go ahead.
Can you hear me, Jim?
Yes, I can hear you fine.
Okay. This actually happened. It was, I want to say 3 or 4 weeks ago. It was right after the Russia invaded Ukraine, and we have a very large Russian and Ukrainian population in our church. They actually have their own Bible studies that are in Russian, and some of the participants will come out in the 11 o'clock service and sit in the back. There's an earpiece they listen to, and one of our deacons who is Russian will translate the sermon to them. So at this particular service, I wasn't volunteering. My wife and I were just coming up, going to a service, and we were sitting on the far right-hand side. I was on the seated on the outside in the second row from the front on the far right-hand side. And as the pastor was speaking, a woman came forward. I believe she had came from the restroom or was just looking for her family. But I did notice she took about 5 or 6 seconds longer than a normal person would to find their seat. When that happened, I looked over at the safety person that was seated close to me, and we met eyes, kind of like, okay, something may be going on here. Now, she was an older lady, no weapon on her, but it was just, we could tell something was happening. And a few seconds later, she walked to the very front of the church, in front of the pastor, and sat down in a seat in front of him in a prone position, leaned forward. At that point in time, I knew that something was about to happen. I looked over at the safety person. He was already standing up, and it just that quick, she stood up and interrupted the pastor and said, "I want to say something to my church." And he said, "Hold on just a minute. Let me finish here." And she sat down. No one responded to her. In that situation, usually a pastor was supposed to go and, ask to speak with her privately, or, just get her out of that in front of the church. And no one responded. I looked at the safety person. I said, "Hey, you need to get over there." He went and sat next to her. He was very, his behavior was very non-confrontational. He kind of just moseyed over there. He sat next to her, said hello, leaned back. And 1 minute later, the pastor finished his sermon and got off the stage. She went to the back. So what we ended up finding out was she was seated in the very back. She got up. The safety person in the back did not recognize that she was leaving her seat, did not call it out on our radio. So the person in the front of the church couldn't see where she came from. She left her things in her seat, her Bible, her purse, I'm guessing. And she went to the very front of the church. Person in the front thinks she's looking for a seat. My back is to her. At that point in time, no one asked her if she needed help finding a seat, or just see if she needed help at all. And then she proceeded to, sit down. And what had happened, we found out, was either through the interpretation from the pastor to the deacon to the people, something was misinterpreted, or we more than likely believe she misheard something the pastor said through that interpretation, because she was the only one that heard it that way. She misheard something and became upset. And in their culture, they are very confrontational. They don't want to speak with you afterwards. They want to handle it right then. And side note, there's a lot of tension between our Ukrainian and Russian population at our church. So I guess this was something she felt like she needed to address. So that's kind of the overall gist of everything. Jim, is that kind of what you were looking for? I think you're on mute.
Yeah, I was muted. Yeah, I wanted to ask you, did you ever have an opportunity, did anybody have an opportunity to talk to her and find out what she was upset about?
Yes, as soon as she walked out, safety person was following her, and then our director of operations met her as she was walking outside. And that's when he interviewed her and asked, "Hey, what can we help you with?" And that's when she vented that she didn't like something the pastor said. And I believe because of the language barrier, that's
Right.
why we had the deacon reach out to her,
Right.
the Russian deacon. So that's how we found out everything from her point of view.
Well, it's interesting. I was talking to a friend of mine that similar type situation, and we were kind of discussing discussing your issue. And I said, I think one of the things that I've heard and one of the things that I've noticed, and this is something we have to be very careful with, is that there is a war going on between the two, and it's kind of whatever information they get. But we have to understand that there's still good people in Russia, that they're not for this war. There's been new reports and a lot of reports out right now that are talking about how parents of sons that are in this war thought that they were just going for a training exercise with the Ukrainians, and that now all of a sudden they're finding out that they're over there fighting for their lives. And so there's been protesters. There's been a large amount of people arrested who have protested this war. We saw a lady that was on a news station that walked out behind the person reporting and held up a sign and said, "This is a fake war. This isn't what it's supposed to be." So when we're praying, and I mean, I would make this recommendation to any of the pastors that you might be around, that when we're praying about these things, we need to make sure that we pray kind of for both sides. Now, we understand that Russia is the aggressor. I mean, that we've seen this. Our news is freer, and so we get it. But like I said, there's a lot of people that probably are upset that this is going on and want it to stop just as much as everybody else does. So that's why I was kind of curious when you said misinterpreted. I would bet if you went back and played it, the pastor probably said, pray for the war in Ukraine, and forgot the Russians. And something like that would be, something they may misinterpret. So I don't know. Like I said, I would love to. I would love to see if we follow up on it and find out more, Dave.
Hey, Jim, it the language of what she was titling around was something he said around Russians and how they go to church. And the way she took it, she was thinking that Russians could not worship in Russia, and it was painting them in a bad light, when what he was saying is he was kind of commenting to the underground worship going on in Ukraine, how they were in bunkers and how they were having to go underground. And I guess through that, she was thinking that Russians have to be underground to worship, which that's one of the things she was upset about, was like, okay, now the Russians are getting another bad rap for this.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Well, it's funny you bring that up, because I went out a couple of weeks ago and started looking at this war and started looking at Christians in Ukraine. And I found a very interesting article. I mean, I found multiple articles on this, but it was talking about that in Ukraine and in Russia, there's a large population of Orthodox Christians. And the Ukraine are like the Ukraine Orthodox Christians, and the Russians are the patriarchs. And there's a little bit of a rift right now between those two also. So it's, the leader of the patriarch group in Russia has kind of blessed this war, because they felt from the propaganda that they were getting that, Ukraine was looking at invading them and trying to take more property and stuff like that. It was several interesting articles on that, but I've been kind of concerned that we might see something for this, but I wasn't seeing it kind of like what you saw. So that just educates us on, we need to make sure that if they're in our congregation, that we're being very sympathetic to what is happening to them also, because I'm for sure they have loved ones that are over there. I'm for sure that they may have loved ones in the Ukraine also, because at one time they were part of the Soviet Union, or Russia. Kind of showing my age there. Wow. So, but
yeah, Pastor Rusty actually entitled his next sermon, "Jesus Brings Us Together."
Yeah.
And he focused, even though he didn't name names, you could tell it was about how we're all one under Christ.
Yes.
And that was what the whole sermon was about the following weekend.
Yeah. Well, you said something interesting. I kind of want to bring it up. You said it was your day off, but you kind of got involved, right?
Yeah, this was unknown to me. The associate pastor and the lead pastor had gotten together and asked me to take on a new role, but they hadn't sat down with me yet. And that was like a month before. So what I would normally do is I'm one of John's helpers. John Jacobson runs our safety.
Yep.
And I would volunteer in different spots. And in this particular service, I wasn't, volunteering. So I was there to worship. So I was just a participant at that time.
Well, but see, you prove a point that I've been making, that even though we may feel like we don't have to serve that Sunday, if something is to happen, we're immediately called back in. I mean, we're kind of like in the reserves, and we got to respond to it, because I showed a video, and I'll be showing it when I come down to your church, of a lady that got on stage at a large church. And one of the guys that was there said that, it wasn't his Sunday to serve. And he kind of thought other people were going to jump up and respond to it, and they didn't. So he kind of was like a little bit upset with himself that he didn't jump up and respond. But so I tell my guys when they come in and they say, "Hey, I really don't want to serve this weekend," and I go, "Well, please still put a radio on because if something starts, you're going to be involved in it no matter what. So, you know, it's something that we need to work on and make sure that we completely understand that even though you may not be serving at that moment in time, if a situation happens, you need to move toward and help out. But good points, good points. So do you have anything else you wanted to add?
I don't, unless you needed me to address any other parts of it.
Well, I tell you what, when we get finished here, I'm going to go through a couple more slides talking about mental illness. When we get through these slides, just hang on. Like I said, I've got you on as a co-host, so you can talk. But if anybody has any questions, I'll let them ask. Wendy, if you don't mind, kind of watch for questions and stuff like that. So, all right, let's go through some other current events that just happened here recently. Well, maybe. Main Street Baptist Church over in Bartow, they come to our church, they come to our training all the time. They always come over when we're over in Polk County. They had a woman that, well, let me start this back. They had a fire at the church, and of course you can see the sanctuary is, just about completely destroyed. And at first they thought, the fire department thought that it was a electrical fire, that somewhere an electrical short had happened and it caused the fire. They were able to go back and look at their cameras, and this is why cameras are important. Not, like I tell people, cameras are usually used after the event happens and not when the event happens or before it, that you notice something. But when they went back and looked at the cameras, a woman that they had issues with, she had got some sort of accelerant and had poured it all over the front of the church and set it on fire. And she's been arrested. She has some mental health illness issues. This is what we're talking about again. And it's just, I'm going to say this about Main Street Baptist Church. I've been in contact with them since this happened. They've been talking to us. And of course, they really are doing this the Christian way. They are praying for this person and hoping this person gets the help. They have no animosity against this person. Nothing, they don't wish ill on this person. And every time I have an opportunity to talk with them or get an email from them, it's really encouraging. It's very sad for what happened here, and they're going to rebuild. They know they will, but it's just very encouraging to hear them really talk about how Christ is living in this, and Christ is showing them helping them how they handle this. And so I'm just, like I said, it just really warms my heart when we hear things like that. So pray for Main Street Baptist Church out there. Please think about it and just say a little prayer for them, because they're going to go through some times here, but God is good. Nobody was injured. They were afraid that somebody, when they thought it might have been an electrical fire, when they saw where it started, they were afraid. Homeless people sometimes sleep in the front of their church, and they were afraid that a homeless person might have accidentally started the fire. So it was just, they were very concerned about it, but it ended up being this woman. And like I said, they had had issues with her before, and not recently, I don't believe, but this is things that happen. These are things that happen. And of course, we went down and did some training down in Venice at West Coast. And sure enough, the day after we get finished talking about mental illness in the churches and how we're seeing an increase in it, Colonial Baptist Church down in Venice contacted us and said that they had a lady, this lady that's in the picture, they're coming to the church with 2 kids in tow. And when she walked into the church, she was behind their sound booth, and they didn't really see her from where she was. And she got down and started doing yoga. And then she stood up and started praying out loud. And then the pastor asked if he could help her. And then all of a sudden she started going toward the pastor, yelling that he was telling lies. They stepped in front of her, stopped her, got her outside. Of course, the 2 children, she screamed at one of the safety team members that he was the devil. And then the child got into it, was screaming that he was the devil. And they went ahead and got her outside, talked to her, contacted local law enforcement. They got a picture of the vehicle. That is an Arizona tag, a CRV. It is a domestic issue that started where the pastor was involved in trying to talk with both parties. And apparently they've now separated, but she was very upset over it. And so they're going to do a follow-up on it and see if they can't find out some more information. And if, like I said, the picture that you see up here at the top, the thing that really, they said really surprised them was that she had on this really nice dress, but she had on like a bathrobe over the top of it. At one moment, she stuck her hand into her bathrobe, and it kind of took the guys by, it concerned them. So they kind of stepped in and tried to, tell her, don't, I think they touched her arm or something like that. And that's when she started screaming about, don't touch me, you're the devil and things. Very disruptive in the church. You got to take in consideration that when things like this happen, it really scares people. So this is why we need to be more involved in talking to everybody that comes into the church. In fact, she did have a conversation with one of the ushers at the front of the door. And that was a person that later on kind of got involved and kind of stepped in and started talking to her to help it out. But it was a very scary situation there for a little bit. So these are just things that we have to be very careful about. So we'll go to the questions.
I don't see any questions.
Do you have your phone on, babe?
Yes, I did. Does anybody have any questions? I don't see any.
Well, I want to thank go ahead.
I was gonna say, if you guys think of any questions later, let us know. We can connect you with David, or we can, if you have questions on other things too, we can also help with that.
Yeah, and let us, get in touch with us. You got our email address. If there's anything that we can help you with, any other questions that you might have for David, let me know. And I'm going to be seeing them soon. In fact, I did not, we were really rushed tonight. I was up at the church working with the youth, and I came home and got together real quick because I wanted to make sure that we had an opportunity to get together during this week. We have a grand opening, like I said, tomorrow. It's all hands on deck. We talked about special events that might be happening at your church that doesn't have anything to do with your church. This is one of these events. It's going to be, we've opened up a lit soccer field. We're going to have 5,000 families there. And so that looks like it's going to push it to probably close to 20,000 people there. It's very exciting for us because it's bringing the community to the church. But as a safety team leader and just watching things that are going on, it does concern us. Just, I mean, we have to watch it because there's just so many people that are going to be there. We want to make sure that everybody is safe. So if there are no other questions right this very moment, we'll just go ahead and go through a couple of slides. We talk about this. USCCA, we have joined with them. They're a sponsor of ours right now, and they are coming to almost all of our trainings right now so that they can talk about, they are a change company. They now do actual insurance, and you would not drive your car without insurance, and you shouldn't be carrying a weapon with, and they cover any use of force, even if you have to use a frying pan or a golf club to protect yourself. They use any type of use of force that you use, as long as legal use of force and justified, I should say, use of force. And plus, they're really good in training. They have a lot of training videos out there, and I use them when I do concealed weapon classes. So it's really good. And they're coming with us and now doing a little bit of explaining who they are and what they do for you. We still have our free resources out there, putting together a safety plan, developing the safety team, carrying weapons in the church, and Sunday morning, what to look for. We're getting great reviews from the book. Contact us if you want to receive a copy. For a $20 donation, all money, of course, goes to Trinity Security Allies. And we've been very blessed with the response that we've gotten on this. And just, if you'd like to know more about my life, This really doesn't have anything to do with church safety and security. I talk a little bit about it at the end of how we got into this, but it's more about my life of how we really got to where we are today. It's this is something that we started, Kevin Haggerty and I, and Kevin is a pastor of a church in Holiday over here. And we started talking about issues that are facing the world. And like last week, we spoke about the Hunter Biden laptop that has come out. And what we really talked about, and here was the thing that we were trying to address when we talked about it, is that how the media covered a story that is really important in our world today. Now, I don't know whether it would have affected the election or not, but the media lied to us. And that was the thing that we were trying to talk about, that you really need to pay attention to what the media is telling you. And when people come to us, here's the what I kind of say it as. When somebody comes to you and says something about the Bible or says something that doesn't sound right, what is the first thing that we do? We go to the Bible. We go to the Bible and we look into the Word. We look into the Old Testament, the New Testament, and we try to find out what they're talking about. And then we read it and we study it and we see whether or not they're telling the truth, or whether, it's, or they're misinterpreted. I will say that. We had a guy that misinterpreted some scripture. We tried to talk with him. We tried to explain it to him, and he totally lost his mind. What we're doing at True Christian Talk is we're just trying to work. We're looking at the world events that are going on, and we're bringing them to you. And one of the things that just happened here recently was that Time Magazine did an article that they said, we're going to change the name of white Christian nationalists. We're going to now start calling them ambassadors. We are ambassadors for Christ. And Christ called us ambassadors. And so now they've taken that word and they've made it to where it's almost a racist term now, that if you are ambassador for Christ, you're a white Christian nationalist. Now, a lot of people don't read Time Magazine, but that's why it's important that we're doing this True Christian Talk, because we brought it to your attention of what is going on. That video is still on YouTube. It's still out there. Tomorrow, we're going to be doing a Facebook Live because we have 2 strikes against us because we're telling the truth. YouTube has given us 2 strikes and they have suspended us from being able to go live for a week. So we're going to go on Facebook tomorrow and we'll put a post out there and let everybody know the link and things like that. But it's just really scary of how free speech has really started to be, cut off. It's not like it used to be in the old days where we could have a conversation. But we talked about issues that really truly important to us as Christians, and we need to be looking at, and we are a part of this world, and we need to be knowing what's happening, because we really need to take a stand on Christian values. And the way that we tell you to do this is that you have to vote. So come out tomorrow if you can. On tomorrow, Thursday, we'll be on True Christian Talk Facebook page, and we're going to go live and do a session there. And hopefully Facebook won't kick us off like YouTube has. We have been suspended twice on Facebook, I will say that. So we'll just have to see what happens.
Jim, I'm going to interrupt you for just a second.
Sure.
John is asking, the lady at Colonial Baptist, was she arrested or trespassed?
Neither one. And that's why I said there's a follow-up going on it. They really want to help her. It is involving a divorce. There's a whole bunch of other issues going on here, and they'd really like to help her. And so that's why she wasn't at this time, but that doesn't mean it might not happen sooner or later. You need to take each situation and look at it. And because of, her situation, where they found out later that her husband had left her, supposedly she's living in a trailer with no money, no food or anything like that. So they really wanted to help her. So they did not trespass her at this point in time. I want to thank all of y'all that came out tonight. I appreciate it. I'm sorry that it was on Wednesday. We will not be live tomorrow, and we will not be live the week after that. It's the first week of the month, but we will be back. and we'll have a topic that we will post out there, and we'll be back on Thursday nights, and we look forward to seeing you there. If nobody else has anything they want to ask or add, we'll go ahead and say goodnight. Thank you very much for coming out. God bless you. God bless you for being concerned about the safety of your flock, and just be safe out there, because it is a fallen world and we're seeing a lot of things that we've never seen before. So you have any questions, any issues, anything you want to get in touch with us about, you know where we're at, and we'll talk to you soon. God bless, and we'll talk soon. Bye.